Well, hello. What have we got today? Well, we've got a little bit of an older one, so let's go back to 1957, where the world was obsessed with radioactive creatures because it was the nuclear age, it was the Cold War, it was all the rage. And this film is a byproduct of that era, so we're going to take a look at that with, an open mind. If you're new to the channel, basically I watch a movie, I sit down, and then I yammer on about it in one take. I want it to be raw and natural, even if I sound like an idiot. That's just what I'm going for. So if that's your thing, awesome. If not, feel free to exit the video. I would not take offense. Also feel free to tell me these are awful videos. I'm fine with that too. That said, I'm going to give you a little bit of a synopsis. If you don't want any spoilers, skip ahead on a little timestamp to the part that says thoughts or rating or whatever I put there. If for some reason I give a spoiler in the thoughts, I will try to put spoilers in brackets there as well, so you know to just basically skip this video essentially at that point. So without further ado, let us begin. So we have two young gentlemen who are nuclear scientists. They are picking up some crazy measurements on their Geiger counter from their little science hut-based thing, whatever you want to call it. So they decide to go explore. They notice that it's coming from Mystery Mountain. I don't remember what state that's in, but it's a legitimate place, like lots of UFO sightings and stuff like that, and paranormal things. So perfect setting for a film like this, to be completely fair. Anyway, they go drive out there to go see what's going on. They pull up in their Jeep and they have to go walk down the rest of the trail, and they find a cave, and they're like, hang on a second, this cave wasn't here before. Okay, well, let's explore it. Why not, right? It's very unusual. They head into the cave and they're looking around, and they don't see any footprints or anything, but the cave clearly was made recently. There's even, they say there's a pile of rubble that like sets them off as, oh, we should go over there and look, and there's a cave, whatever. Anyway, inside the cave, this movie doesn't take its time, because boom, we've got, oh, there's something in the distance, let's go follow them. They call out, they say, hey, whoever's there, we're coming towards you. We are armed, but it's only for our own protection. We don't mean any harm, whatever. Lo and behold, it's not a person, it's a brain. Giant floating brain with eyeballs. Yeah, so this is our good friend Gore. So Gore is a brain alien from the planet Arous, who has come to Earth with a bit of a vendetta against his own people, I suppose, and us to an extent, because he kills Dan right there. Boom, Dan's dead. Okay. I'd assume he was going to be a main character for the whole film, but no, he's dead right away. Okay, cool. Bye, Dan. Good knowing you. Anyway, this brain decides to enter into Steve's body and sort of take him over. So it's like a non-corporeal brain when they see it. So it's like a ghost brain or whatever you want to call it, something like that. So you can't harm it. Like throughout the film, various people try to stop it. Throw things at it, shoot at it. Nothing happens. It's non-corporeal. You can't do anything to something like that, right? So anyway, whatever. So he goes back home in his newly possessed form. Essentially, Gore is controlling him at this point, because we meet his fiancée, Sally. They're about to be married. It's mentioned many times, so that we're fully aware that they're definitely madly in love. Don't see much of that in the film, but also, I guess it's a different time, so you're not going to see too much crazy stuff like, makeout sessions. But we do, because turns out Gore is a little bit of a horn dog for humans. Yeah, he's a floating brain, but he thinks Sally is shit hot, and he goes for it. There are a couple scenes where he's like making out with her, and she's like, wow, Steve, you've never kissed me like that before. Okay, so we're going there, are we? Right, okay, well, that's Gore. So he's, as far as like giant floating brains go, what a stupid thing to say, but as far as giant floating brains go, Gore is very human. We do learn later that there is another brain by the name of Baal who's come to Earth to try to capture and arrest Gore, and I guess bring him back to be either tried or executed or whatever floating brains do on Arous. I don't know Arous politics too much. Every time I say Arous, I think of like there's a dwarf planet just beyond Pluto called Arous, E-R-I-S, but this is A-R-O-U-S. Not that it matters or that any of you care, but in my head canon, it keeps trying to insert our existing dwarf planet in the Kuiper Belt to be this planet, but it's not. It's from another star system, and it's mentioned that. Anyway, there's this whole thing. Steve's kind of like, why are you picking me? Like, of all the people, like, why would you pick me? And he says basically, Gore says to him, I guess he's in his brain talking or whatever, or no, he appears, sorry, and he tells him basically, like, I chose you specifically because A, you're a renowned nuclear scientist, so you have access to areas that I need to go. So I chose you specifically, and this is even before I found out about Sally. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Anyway, he's like, obviously you leave Sally alone. He's like, oh no, I'm gonna make out with your girlfriend. Because that's what alien giant brains that float and are non-corporeal do. They steal your girl. It's happened to me many times. Probably happened to you, I'm sure. We've all been there. It sucks, but how do you compete with a floating ghost brain? You can't. Anyway, Sally's on to him, however. So she's talking with her dad and explains the situation. It's like, Dad, like, there's something up here. You know, like, Steve's acting really weird. And John, the father, is like, okay, well, I'll go talk to him. It's probably nothing. He goes and talks to Steve, and Steve is nice for about 4 seconds before yelling at him to get out. And he's like, all right, I suppose I'll leave if that's what you want me to do. He's like, yeah, that's what I want you to do. So John fucks off and goes back and tells Sally. But instead of saying, yeah, there's something definitely wrong with him, he like flipped out at me and told me to frig off, and he's usually like super nice and everything, but no, she said he sits down with her and she cooks him a dinner, and Dad looks at daughter and says, you know, he's a grown man, he's got his own problems he's dealing with, just, you know, let him be for now and it'll be fine. Okay. So anyway, at this point, or shortly thereafter, we're introduced to Baal, who I was telling you about as the other brain, who basically tells the whole story that Gore is like a wanted convict from their planet, that he's been sent to Earth to track him down and bring him back and all that stuff, and he needs their help essentially because they're close to Steve, and Steve is his vessel and all this stuff. We got a whole like situation like that going on, so they're trying to figure out, okay, well, who are we going to use? Baal tells them basically, like, I need to get into one of your bodies, but I'm just giving you a heads up. When I'm in that body, I'm in full control of it. So, you guys good with it? And of course, John and Sally are both arguing on which one of them should be the possessed one. And obviously, neither of them wants to see the other one get possessed, so they're all trying to say. And then finally, what about the dog? So yeah, there's a dog named George, who is the target. And even Ball's like, yeah, he's relatively intelligent. You know what? Sure, let's make this work. We'll make this work. So he tests it out, goes in the dog. He's like, okay, yeah, that works. I'll be the dog. That's fine. He then tells them basically that there is no way that you can stop Gore when he's in his non-corporeal form or when he's in Steve. Because when he's in Steve, unless Steve dies, Gore's going to be fine. So I mean, if Steve wants to make the ultimate sacrifice, or you want to sacrifice Steve, you can do that, and that will kill him, but, like, that's probably not the greatest option, considering, you know, he's the main character, essentially, and everyone loves him, so they're not down with that, so they're like, okay, so Baal tells them, okay, we do have a weakness, our species, once every 24 hours, we have to exit the body and become physical, so our true form, and when we're physical, only then can we be harmed. And he mentions a part of the brain that I don't remember off the top of my head, despite watching this, like, you know, literally like 5 minutes ago, and them saying it multiple times, but, you know, my little smooth reptile brain didn't pick that up. So anyway, it's part of the human brain that is also miraculously on this giant brain creature that has the same structure as a human brain, despite being from a completely alien world. Okay, so I'm gonna go off on a little tangent here. All these alien movies, like, they always make things human-like because that's the only thing we have reference for. But if you think about it, like, another planet, not only would it not have the creatures on it not have the same brain as a human, There literally wouldn't even be animals or plants on other planets. And that's kind of wild to think about too, right? So like, animals are specifically evolved from an organism called Luca in our Earth's history. Unless you don't believe in evolution, but I'm going to assume that you do. And if not, I mean no offense whatsoever, but yeah, evolution's real. So Luca was the last universal common ancestor, which like every piece of life came from, essentially. It wasn't the first ever life, but it was the first life that was successfully able to continue its lineage. So anyway, that's the story of Luca. And everything is derived from that. Plants, animals, fungus, bacteria, algae, whatever you want to call it. Yes, even snails. I don't know why that was the thing. But anyway, there wouldn't be animals on another planet because Luca, the last universal ancestor that made animals, or animals branched off from, wouldn't have been on that planet. So it would have an entirely different tree of life, which is really kind of crazy to think about. Like, even if we find life on Europa, it's not going to be plants or animals. It's going to be a completely unique organism on a completely unique tree of life. Anyway, sorry about that tangent. Just, these giant brains from another planet that are sentient and non-corporeal, having the same structure as a human brain, minus the, 2 extra eyes. Whatever. Anyway, back to the story. Sorry about that. So Steve, his main plan now is to go see this nuclear test that's going to be happening in Indian Springs. He knows a colonel there, I guess, because he's, nuclear physicist or whatever he is, and so he's going to go and watch the test, which he does go and do. That's great. He also has a scene where there's like borderline assault on Sally. It doesn't go too far, but like for those times, I'm sure that was kind of disturbing. He stops before anything gets crazy or whatever. He takes her out for like a car ride or something. And yeah. Anyway, so that's lovely. And then he basically just tells her, forget about it. This didn't happen. Don't worry about it. Okay, I was just blowing off steam because whatever. At this point, I forgot to mention he's also exploded a plane in midair just for fun, and they hear about it on the radio, so they go drive down to the crash site, and the colonel's there, and they're investigating. There are all these burn victims and stuff. It's not super graphic, obviously, because it's like 1957, but it's implied that they're horribly burned. The copy I watched wasn't the greatest quality, so maybe like the makeup was better in the like base copy of the film or whatever. But anyway, all these people are burned. Plane was crashed. There's a meeting with scientists and military operatives, and they like discuss how basically all of the plane crash victims had massive amounts of radiation dose, but none of it was from uranium or cobalt or any of the whatever they said, a bunch of elements that are radioactive. Get your periodic table out and correct them if they're wrong about which is radioactive or not. But anyway, it's none of those. So the only explanation is we're being invaded by aliens, because obviously, right? I mean, that would be your first assumption. Okay, well, I don't know what it is immediately upon learning upon it, so definitely aliens. But it's the 50s, so of course it was aliens. Aliens attack all the time in the 50s. Anyway, getting sidetracked again. So he goes to the test site and he comes and he's like, listen, General, I want to talk to you about something. General and Colonel are there. The Colonel, his buddy, and then the General who's the General. It's like, listen, I want to talk to you about something there. The General's like, you know what? Absolutely, but I have a meeting right now that I have to attend, like, immediately. And I forgot to mention, sorry, the cops are on to him at this point about Dan. So they find Dan's body. Also, Sally and John had gone to the mountain before he came back. I forgot to mention that too, and they find Dan's body in the Geiger counter. So they're fully aware of some shit's going down. And Steve this whole time has been insisting that Dan came back with him and then went off to Vegas for a week to unwind. So that's his story, and he's sticking to it, but like multiple people have found the body at this point. Anyway, the sheriff confronts him about it, and he's like, listen, Steve, I like you and everything, but you're in a lot of trouble. And Steve's like, no, actually you're in a lot of trouble. And it kills the sheriff, so that's great. Sheriff fires at Steve's body, but I guess while the brain is in Steve, it can't be harmed, even though earlier it said that if Steve dies and he's it, I don't know how that works. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Bullets don't do anything. Sheriff dead sheriff. Okay, so awesome. Anyway, back to the nuclear test. He says, okay, listen, General, is your meeting, your top secret meeting, about Dan's body and the plane crash? Because if it is, I can explain all that if you give me a minute of your time. And the General's like, Thinking in his head, how the fuck did he know that? Okay, you got 2 minutes, come in. He comes in. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to do a nuclear test, right? Well, have a gander out that window. And they're like, okay. Boom. It's not the nuke, though. It's confirmed because a loudspeaker says, ladies and gentlemen, that wasn't the nuke. Okay. He says, listen, I did that. I blew up the plane. Yeah, I killed Dan too. All this stuff. Listen, I'm a creature from another planet. I'm here. Here's the plan. You're going to get delegates from all the major nuclear nations. So USA, China, France, Russia, England, India. We're all going to get together. You're going to get delegates from them, and I'm going to talk to them. And if they don't show up, I'm going to destroy whatever nation doesn't send a delegate's capital city. You got 5 hours or something like that. Something ridiculous. And they're like, oh shit, okay. Colonel, gets up and tries to fire, and it doesn't do anything on him, just like a sheriff. Kills the colonel right there in front of the general, so that's great. Good time. Steve goes home to crash for a little bit because Gore is a little bit tired. So these brains, they need to exit the body every 24 hours to recuperate, because I guess it takes a lot of energy to possess a human. Cool, that makes sense. I'm down. But he's not going to exit. He has a little nap, but that's about it. Sally's completely onto him at this point too, like I said. So, has a nap, goes back to the meeting, the second meeting. All the delegates are there. The Soviet guy's like, listen, I'm only here, I don't believe it, but they sent me because I'm curious. Well, he'll find out. Anyway, he says, okay guys, here's the deal. Tells the whole spiel about his origin and all that. And now here's the plan. So what your countries are going to do is you're going to hand over all your nuclear resources to me. You're going to hand over all your industrial resources to me. You're going to make a shit ton of interstellar rockets, because that technology exists on Earth in the 50s. And you're going to work round the clock until this is accomplished. And I'm going to take them, and I'm going to go back to my home. And I'm going to basically take over and literally, he says, rule the universe, which is very, 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 he thinks pretty highly of himself. The universe is a big place. Even the galaxy would be next to impossible. But having nuclear warheads from Earth on interstellar rockets, obviously you could definitely take over the galaxy. So, good plan. For giant brains with magical powers, they're not that much smarter than people, to be completely honest. But that's neither here nor there. So he says, okay guys, you don't believe me? Gather around the window, I'll show you. The general also explained, by the way, this is legit. I saw him kill a guy in front of me, bullets didn't do anything. He says, gather around the window. You see that airplane over there? All the delegates look, yeah. So, he blows it up again, second airplane down. Immediately everyone's like, okay, this guy's legit. So, he couldn't have, had a bomber in the plane that, triggers it from, I don't know. But, whatever, they believe he has the power, because he basically looks at it, the plane explodes. So, yeah, that's pretty sus. That's pretty sus. So they all bend, and they're like, okay, we'll help you out. Anyway, he goes back home, Steve does, and Sally is in his home, and she writes him a little note, a diagram of a brain pointing to the weak spot, and he says, this is Gore's Achilles heel on it, and she puts it somewhere where, on his desk, kind of there, but so he'll see it. Anyway, he gets home, crashes on the couch, my head, Gore exits. Gore's in his physical form now. He's got to recuperate, right? He's got to be himself. You got to be you, Anyway, so Steve sees this letter and nonchalantly kind of reads it while Gore is talking about, his world, his universal conquest and whatnot. And Sally is hiding in the other room because Steve came home before she could leave. And she's backing up and she bumps into something and turns, and there's the dead, burnt sheriff. So she screams. Gore immediately hears and hover float blobs his way into that room to, I guess, go attack Sally. Steve takes a wood-cutting axe and goes wild. It's that famous scene from the Ernest Scared Stupid intro credits where you see this very brief scene of the brain with the axe and all that. So anyway, that's that scene. Steve kills it, actually, not with too much issue. He hacks into it 7, 8, 9, 10 times, but for something that's like so ominous or whatever, he takes it out pretty quickly, which is cool. That's cool. And he says, like, how did you know? And she says, oh, well, Ball. Oh, you don't know about Ball, do you? Oh yeah, there's another brain from the planet Arous here, and he's in the dog. So Steve, I mean, sure, right? So she calls George over. George, come on, tell him. And George is a dog, so he just is a dog, I guess. So I don't know what happened to Ball. I thought he was gonna come and help, but no, he didn't. He did tell him the weakness though, so I guess he did help, but he's not there for the end. I guess he saw Gore get killed, and he's like, okay, well, my work's done here. I'm the fuck out. Anyways, dog is just a dog, and Steve looks at her, and he's like, oh, you and your imagination. And they smooch, and then the credits roll, and that's the end of the movie. Because, clearly, after everything that has happened, believing that would be insane. Like, that's insane. You know, floating brains, sure. But them in a dog? No, that's ridiculous. Don't even... You're crazy, girl. Anyway. So that was the movie. What did I think? Well, I'm going to do a spoiler thoughts because I really want to touch down again on how weird it is that a floating brain was horny for a human female. Like, that's really bizarre. Like, I don't know how giant brains mate, but, like, I'm sure it's very different than the parts in a human. Unless they're not, which is even, that brings up even more unwanted questions. But yeah, again, I just wanted to touch on that particular thing that I thought was a little bit weird. So, I mean, I know they do things differently in the 50s. Little more out there and more extreme things could be believable in a 50s monster movie. But anyway, that's that. So now what did I think with non-spoilers? Well, it was neat enough. Again, it's very of its age. Like, you know this watching any kind of movie from the late 50s or the early 60s or whatever. They have that vibe. Like, I think I mentioned this in The Deadly Mantis and maybe even Repulsion. I can't remember exactly what I said, but they have a way of talking like this. The brain, you say. You know, like they have that... I don't know how to explain it. It's like Shatner kind of a little bit, how he acts. Like he kind of has that strong, everything is a speech type thing, and whatever. It's a different era. I actually find that stuff enjoyable. It's neat to see a completely different take on how to act in a film. The creature design was a neat idea. It was okay enough looking, but like you could see the string holding it up pretty obviously in multiple scenes. Although the effect of making it non-corporeal was pretty neat. So I guess they just put the film over, like they've had two films over each other or something, one with like the brain and one with the main thing, so it looked see-through. I don't know how that's done, but that was kind of cool. You don't see that too often, I don't think. Yeah. The Gore, our main brain, had an interesting personality. I'll just say that. He was a bit of a hoodlum. I don't know how else to say it other than that. He was a no-goodnik, a degenerate, whatever you want to call him. He was that. As far as the race of creatures that he goes, I can see why he was a criminal. Yeah, overall, the movie doesn't take too much time to get going. Like I said, you're introduced to things pretty quickly, be it the plot, the characters, etc. And the flow is relatively not bad. There's no point in the film where I was looking at my watch saying, oh my god, it's only been 15 minutes. No, it I don't know how long it was. I think it's like an hour and a half, maybe roughly. Maybe less than that, but it didn't feel long anyway. So whether or not that was because it genuinely was short or because it was good enough to keep me interested, or both, I don't know. Anyway, it's not a slog to get through, so if you're okay with the campy kind of 50s sci-fi film tropes, then you'll probably enjoy it. Overall, how inspired was the story? I don't have much reference because I haven't seen too many films from that era that have the same general idea as this, although I know a lot of them exist. So for that, I'd say it's not like the most creative thing in the world, but as far as what I've seen, it was new enough or unique enough that it was enjoyable to sit down and watch. It wasn't like every other 50 movie I've seen. And again, I haven't seen 1,000 movies from that era, but it was different from what I'm used to. I'm only now like starting to get into the older films, and I'm finding they're quite fun. Even though a lot of them I wouldn't rank nearly as high as more modern films, as far as like enjoyment of watching them goes, yeah, they're kind of entertaining. You know, I don't know if I'll watch this one again, but I enjoyed watching it while I did, because just some of the leaps and jumps they go that you have to assume that the audience is going to buy into are pretty large, and that alone is kind of entertaining. So, that being said, what am I going to rate The Brain from Planet Arous? I'm thinking like a 5. Or I'll give it a 5.1. Because it was fun. It's a 50s movie. Like I said, you have to kind of like those kind of movies to get a kick out of that. So because of that, it's very of its age. I'm not going to give it a remarkable mark, but it's definitely passable. You know what? Maybe I will watch it again. I don't know. I have it as an MP4, so I have it forever, essentially. Who knows? But anyway, that's what I'm giving it. 5.1. There's not really any specific reason why I'm giving that, other the fact that it was enjoyable for what it was a little bit, but not like really good. I don't know how else to put it. So should you watch this film? Do you like these kind of movies? I said that like 1,000 times, but that is your determining factor. If you like the kind of schlocky 50s sci-fi, then you'll probably have a hoot with this one. It's a little out there, and that's not just because they're aliens. But anyway, I don't have too much more to say about it than that. It is what it is. It's of its time. Check it out if you're into that kind of stuff. As far as those kind of movies go, I had fun. So, yeah, I'll cut it there. All right, have a good night.